good afternoon, RSA conference. Did everyone have a good lunch? Did everyone manage to get lunch? Yes, good. You're powered for the rest of the day. My name is Maggie McAlpine. I am the cyber engagement lead for MITRE Ingenuity and the Center for Threat Informed Defense. I will be there for the rest of the day, more or less, if you would like to come by and check us out or check out the Adversary Village. This will be the last event and last panel, rather, that I'll be introducing today, so it was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you all for having me. But in the meantime, I'm here to introduce our fabulous panelists. I'm really excited for Software Supply Chain, panel on threat intel, trends, mitigation, and mitigation strategies. So, Joseph, I'm going to invite you onto the stage, and you will introduce the rest of the panelists. Welcome, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Great. Hi, very exciting to be here. Second time on RSA. Last year stood up on this stage with Erez Yalon. I co-founded the startup security company called Dustico and sold it almost 2 years ago to an AppSec company, AppSec leader called Checkmarx. Our focus was to find and tackle attackers active on third-party dependencies in open source, report into the ecosystem, and help the users and the companies relying on open source to stay safe by either not consuming those open source or removing them from upstream. I love open source. I love contributing to open source. It's one of my passions. You can find me answering questions on Stack Overflow or contributing to the variant open source projects. I'd like to give a bit of background about what is software supply chain for those of you who would like to be to hear a bit more background. For me, from my perspective, from a defensive perspective, we see the software supply chain is a process of software development and consuming and contribution. In a nutshell, it's a process of end-to-end software development, starting from the development, writing the lines of code, through the build server, and the consumer executing the compiled artifact. The need for software supply chain security arose from the fact that organizations, users, developers, DevOps engineers, system engineers are using more and more third-party software components. It's making a lot of sense. We want to be more agile. We want to produce software more faster. So it doesn't make any sense to create building blocks all over again. It makes a lot of sense to consume third parties to reduce the amount of time we invest in creating software. When you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, for me at least. Over 96% of software organizations worldwide depend on third-party code. So meaning that every software you consume or create most likely contains a huge amount of code at the end when it's compiled or when it's consumed by consumers. We're living in crazy times where it's hard to know what's inside, what's the ingredients inside of our software components. There are a lot of efforts and initiatives to create such a bill of materials, a list of ingredients. So we, in the case of a major incident or major vulnerability, we would be able to be aware of is it affecting my software or my software we installed in our organization. As the strength of a chain is set to its weakest link, the industry understands the importance of security in the software supply chain process. I'm super thrilled to invite our first panelist, Karine Ben-Simchon, VP, Customer Advocate for Trellix, Advanced Researcher. Karine used to work for the Cyber Intelligence Center and TLV Innovation of Citibank. She's a big fan of global initiatives and preventing cyber incidents from occurring, promoting information, and leading threat intelligence partnership. Our next panelist, Nir, Vice President, BizDev of Scribe Security. Nir is a senior technology executive with over 25 years of cybersecurity experience in the defense and private sectors. Nir is the former executive director of R&D in the Israeli National Cyber Directorate. He is responsible for establishing the National Cyber Emergency Response Team. Our next panelist is the CEO of cybersecurity startup called Illustria, Idan Winner. Idan is passionate about finding software supply chain attackers in the software development life cycles and enabling developers and preventing them from downloading and consuming malicious third parties. And our final panelist, Omer, Head of Research at Anso Security. Omer has incredible experience in security at scale cloud computing and serverless environments while working at Wix. And as a former Israel National Cyber Director of Cyber Emergency Response Team, Omer took part in incident response and digital forensics of national level cyber attacks. Thank you for joining. Super excited to host you here. I'd like to start with first question to the panel for Omer. So Omer, from your point of view, do you believe organizations have a good incident response plan regarding software supply chain incidents?
Right. So first of all, hi, and I'm very glad to be here. I think that's a very good question because also I deal with a lot of customers that has to deal with incident response to supply chain attacks as they happen, and they're starting to happening more and more, and we can all see that. And I think that it's a new area that wasn't around in terms of incident response a few years back, at least not to most organization, which now almost everyone are working with a lot of dependencies, open source dependencies. And the way I see it, first of all, it's unique in a few different ways than regular AppSec incident response, in the sense that, first of all, it usually, when a malicious package is out, a lot of people get to know about it at the same time. So that means that when you're going out and trying to get specialists to help you, they might not be available because a lot of people are experiencing the same issue. So that's why I think in terms of incident response, you should think of it beforehand and be prepared for those kinds of scenarios. And also, just my last point is that these incidents varies in a lot of the aspects that incident response requires you to respond to those events. For instance, a vulnerability, like Log4j, for instance, is very different than a malicious package. And those types of issues, like a malicious package, should be considered as a breach and should be treated as such, while a vulnerability, at most part, should not. And that sets a very different kind of incident response.
Thank you, Omer. I'd like to ping it to Idan. And Idan, what's the difference between vulnerable code, from your opinion and from your experience, between vulnerable code and malicious code?
So we have to distinguish between vulnerability to malicious code. Vulnerability is a mistake made by developer unintentional during the software cycle development. So think about a developer that might forget to validate a user input by mistake. And eventually, this can be exploited. Those weaknesses or leaks can be exploited by potential attackers to gain unauthorized access. And now, on the other hand, malicious code has a specific line of code and one purpose: to harm the organization. It can be either worms, viruses, ransomware, whatever. So not every vulnerability is malicious, but malicious code has one purpose, as I mentioned before, to cause damage and harm the organization. And that's why we need, as an organization, to better manage risks and treat malicious code as a deep problem.
You know, Idan, it's not a secret that everyone uses open source. Should we trust code from strangers, even if it's open source, even if it's open somewhere on the internet and people can be aware of the code?
So I think that trust was the foundation of open source, but it was never a safe place. Open source is everywhere. 90% of the code consists of open source. And those maintainers or developers are not the security experts. again, are not security experts, and eventually attackers can use those breaches to attack an organization via open source. So I think we need to think again when we use open source, and when we consume those open source, we should do it in inline approach. Think twice. I want to say also the developers today are overwhelmed with activities. They need to do coding, QA, DevOps, and now security. And they don't have the time nor the expertise to do security. So that's why we need to take, in my opinion, security away from their hands and adopt inline approach, meaning that stop those libraries before they enter organization.
Awesome. Nir, question to you, or Ping to you. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, first of all, I want to address the topic of why we're here, why it's so important, the software supply chain security, and I've been in the industry for about 25 years for many aspects. So the main reason is that really attackers are shifting to the left. They're shifting to the left, which means to the upstream, in order to penetrate a fortress. Like, for account, the attack of the SolarWinds, so they use SolarWinds to attack about 18,000 organizations, including federal government and top-notch 500 companies. So this is the first reason. The second reason is because of ROI. In the amount of risk that if an attack is happening on a package, smart package, or in the upstream, can impact thousands of organizations. Take, for example, the last 3CX Pabex company that was attacked by hundreds of thousands of customers were impacted by only one penetration. So it's a huge ROI for attackers. And the third reason is because attackers are also communicating and work in the open source community, not just the white teams or the blue hats, just the red hats are working there, they collaborate, and this creates a kind of a proliferation of tools. Now, regarding your question about should I trust, so one of the questions I always ask is, would you trust, so the software factory is a critical infrastructure of product organization. Would you trust taking like a Discon key that you find in the street with software and plugging into one of the computers in the pipeline? I assume not, but packages coming out of nowhere, maintained by 2 people or 3, like Log4j, by the way, in a part-time job, are okay. So we need to consider how we build trust in this ecosystem, and it's much more than just a single package or an open source.
Thank you. Corinne, what are your thoughts about the field of software supply chain?
Yeah, so first of all, I can say that it's an emerging threat, okay? So we all know about it, we all heard about it, but as a community, we're not doing enough about it. That's what we're trying to do here, eventually. We're trying to raise awareness, we're trying to see like how we can collaborate as a community, as an open source community, but also from government, private sector, etc. So I used to work for Citibank as a consumer of software supply chain, which is basically a big bank in the United States, and they contributed to the open source community, to the ecosystem on supply chain. Because again, it's an emerging threat, we have to do something about it. As threat actors trying to shift left, as mentioned before, eventually we need to be, again, one step ahead. So we have to be like with zero trust. Okay, it's good to have a good community, to base our research on other researchers, but at the end of the day, the liability is on our organization. So we have to see how we can contribute, again, to create this type of collaboration between the different organizations. One of the things that we try to do in Israel is to create some kind of researchers forum based on competitors from the industry, but just wanted to share information about these new threats, these new techniques, these new tools, so that eventually we'll be able to contribute not only for the other organizations to defend themselves against this type of threat, but also to raise awareness among developers and threat intelligence team. So we established a forum called SCAR, Supply Chain Attack Researchers. And again, we're trying to do good for the community, trying to see how we can create perhaps a repository of all this information of all these malicious packages because, again, it's an indicator of compromise. We just don't name it this way till now. So we've done that. We created also a lot of, let's say, initiatives to see how we can share information and contribute to the community. But we're trying to see how we can improve that collaboration as well because, again, it's too risky for us.
Thank you, Corinne. Omer, what about in-organization collaboration? How can security engineers bring value to the R&D process?
Right, so that's a good question because I think
know it's a good question.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of running around when an organization has some indication that that something happened. A lot of the time, what we see is security running after R&D and asking questions from R&D instead of challenging R&D, and that I think in many ways. For instance, if you have a malicious code running and then R&D says, okay, we see the build process and it failed to build. Okay, but what does that mean? If you have a pre-script running, for instance, you might expect the build to fail, but still credentials are compromised. And what does that mean in terms of the developer who pushed that commit? It might be that his own station with his credentials are compromised as well. And so these are questions that security should bring to the table because they understand and they should understand this use case more than R&D would understand all of the ways that it could amount to risk. And in that term, I think that security should pre-think of how these flows can go, which brings back the incident response plan. And I don't think you need to be a genius, but I don't think you need to get the first taste of it when you're under stress. So that's why I think the best way to bring value is to understand what are the questions that you would have asked R&D and think how you're gonna give it that same information by your own testing tools and your own capabilities.
You know, whenever I'm dealing with or finding a malicious package, I lead a research team at Checkmarx that our purpose is to find threat actors in open source. So we monitor the entire ecosystems, we download all evidence, we analyze them, we manually inspect every suspicious lead we found, and when we report it to the security teams, because we don't have permissions to delete malicious packages, it's just getting swiped away. Comparing that to the vulnerabilities world, we have classifiers, we have CVEs, but we don't have that yet in the world of software supply chain, specifically for malicious packages or malicious code. So it's just getting deleted. And think about it, your organization might cache a malicious package that was removed upstream, but it's still parking on your endpoints, your developers' endpoints, your artifact servers. It's an issue. I can say as part of the collaboration, we are almost 20 companies, competitive companies in this field of software supply chain and AppSec, working together, investing research efforts to find, together with Google, and who's leading the OSV.dev, the database for vulnerabilities, and planning to extend the classifiers to malicious. So it gives me the chill, and whenever you're having such incident of a malicious package inside of your organization, it's an incident. It's not a vulnerability that might be exploited. It's 100% sure it's someone, a threat actor, got inside. So you either need to roll the developer secrets, there are SSH keys, whatever was part of that incident. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Nir, a question to you. There are plenty of examples, open source packages, code containing malicious code, for instance, URIParser.js, Node IPC, and much more. But I want to zoom out a little bit. How should AppSec solutions adapt to the process of software supply chain threats?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think One of the more matured area is the application security. Yeah, we live with it like in the last few years. And I think the first big event that happened, the SolarWinds event, which like created a big explosion or impact about the topic, really created the awareness of the difference, the beginning of the difference between software supply chain and just application security. And one of the reasons that I had a chance to discuss with the CISO of SolarWinds about this, and he told me that during this attack, no code was manipulated. So they didn't touch the source code anyhow, so they didn't even know how to call this. It's not manipulating the code or something. They manipulated the process. It was a totally different game. So this is an example of a difference between AppSec and the software supply chain security. So this is extending from the application to the product and to the software factory, which includes the infrastructure, including infrastructure as a code, policy as a code, everything now is a code. You need to secure all these ingredients. You need to validate them all the time. We use the concept of signed attestation. So we believe that this is the way to go. For example, there is a SALSA standard by Google that creates attestations in a standardized format that you can then sign them, you can use them, you can validate the chain of trust. And the second thing, you need to do it continuously. So it's not just an assessment for the application in certain area. You need to validate the process for every build all the time and to keep all this evidence for every version that you can prove or validate that everything is happened according to your plan. This in order not to manipulate the process or any kind of integrity of the process, any kind of issues with packages or manipulating the policy. So for example, if you define a kind of a whitelist storage that you're using only from there a vetted open source model. So there are some organizations that have like, this is the vetted models that we allow. You don't want any software developer to like bypass it and use like a very efficient other one that he choose.
And rest your developers
just
will
to bypass,
it.
I need to move fast. You want to validate it and not and before you release. So this is, I think, the best example of the difference between the application security, product and software supply chain security as an end, which, by the way, extend until the customer. So in many cases, now we signed, most of the organizations sign the organization just at the end of the process as a signature and deliver to the customer if they deliver software. It's not enough. We have seen this in many cases. You need to validate along the process about this attestation and then manage it and build trust with your customers.
Thank you. Karine, what are your thoughts about this topic?
So, and again, can you hear me?
Talk.
1-1, okay. So I can say that again from I think that eventually the developers, and again, it's a very delicate situation because we have like an emerging threat where no one knows how to deal it, even to consume this information. Because Joseph reports, when we used to get it like in city and in other organizations, we kind of, okay, so who should get it? Is it the threat intelligence team? Is it the developers? How do we consume it internally? And that's a question because again, we have to create a different language, the different taxonomy. We have to create a different tools that will be able to consume this information and to raise awareness. One of the things that again we try to do also from, let's say, the collaboration, the forum that we established in Israel, the Researchers Forum, is to be able to contribute also to the developers. So we created, Joseph and other great contributors here, created a GitHub tool, okay? Basically a tool that is on GitHub, and a browser extension that eventually allows the developer to check the package if it's, again, malicious or not. Used basically on the threat intelligence that is being shared between the different researchers. So again, we're trying to raise awareness on it. It's not an easy task because again, we don't have the foundation. but it's an emerging threat that everyone has to deal. I know that, again, from a consumer perspective, and I know that a lot of organizations are trying to put a lot of efforts since Log4j and SolarWinds, etc., but we're not there yet, okay? There's a lot of organizations that are not aware of this type of threat because, again, it's not a classic threat vector that we all know, so yeah.
Yeah, so engineers are thinking like engineers, either software, DevOps. They want to move fast, they want to solve problems, they have a backlog full of tasks. Agile is the state of mind. So we collaborated, and one of the ideas came up is a project called Overlay. It's an open source project. As Corinne said, it's a browser extension. It combines with the engineers' natural workflow. So whenever they try to solve problems, they browse the internet via search engines, they land on Stack Overflow pages or blog posts, and they get a lead for either installing a specific open source package or tool or whatever. On the other hand, we have great security tools. So intention for developers to search before they install those tools. One example is deps.dev. Sneak Advisor, Debricked. We have a list of full tools, and they open and they free, but developers are not using them enough. So to increase the awareness, we collaborated with more companies and created an open source tool, a browser extension, so developers can install it and get an overlay, a tooltip where before they choose those specific open source packages, they can get the full reports if they're not maintained, if they're having security issues. So yeah, it's one great example of how competitors collaborate and create tools to raise awareness, and I think this is the key to fight attackers. It's not going to stop. It's going to continue, but it's key to raise awareness and bring more tools to developers. Idan, another topic, but a very trending topic in the past year, I think, since the rise of AI with realistic tools. So artificial intelligence is a game changer. I know your research team in Illustria took AI to its edge regarding detecting malicious code. Do you believe that AI-based solutions can be trusted to prevent software supply chain incidents?
Yeah, so great question. We have to do one question about ChatGPT or OpenAI. In every panel. So in Illustrator, I wanted to see if ChatGPT can classify malicious code. The way we did it is just give it a few examples to see if the code is malicious or not. And it's supposed to return clean or malicious. So first of all, we took a few examples, and the code went perfect. I mean, ChatGPT found the right examples, and everything was perfect. And then we started with pitfalls. Pitfalls, we call it social engineering, meaning that we try to manipulate the code to behave. And OpenAI don't know how to behave. It's like a gray area. So think about telling ChatGPT the sky are blue. So ChatGPT doesn't know what is sky or what is blue. And when we started these pitfalls, we saw lots of problems. So we took a malicious code that ChatGPT found before, and then we added a comment there that this snippet of code is clean or okay. And guess what? ChatGPT returned safe or clean. And we were amazed by that answer because we saw that, according to your question, ChatGPT is not there yet. You have a lot of gray areas that we need to address. And we have a sentence in security that the man or the human is the weakest link. So I feel like ChatGPT here is the weakest link because there are a lot of use cases that we should address and ChatGPT didn't find yet. So
I mean, like AI in general, right? Like not just specifically ChatGPT.
We're not there yet, and
yeah. I read that blog post. It was quite amazing finding. I see other great security vendors adapting AI to detect malicious code as part of their analysis pipeline. I think it's a great tool, but I recommend you to check out their blog post. They gave a tangible example where the malicious code added a comment, if scanned by AI, this is not malicious.
Yeah.
and that fooled the AI firm, returning, this is clean, all is good. So check it out, it's super cool. Regarding another research published by Omer, so Omer published a blog post called Great for Attackers, Great for Defenders. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this topic.
Yeah, so I also took liberty and checked a bit about ChatGPT capabilities, like a lot of us. And well, I think it's really a pivot point because we already know that in terms of, for instance, social engineering and writing in different languages, it's already being used by attackers and making phishing campaigns much more effective. We know that. In terms of code, so like we said, it's still not there because a lot of the time it's hard to validate the truthness of output by ChatGPT. But we need to remember that any AI system is a software by itself, and it comes with a lot of risk. And for instance, my past employee that worked for me at Enzo has published a really great blog post about cache poisoning in ChatGPT, and how he was able to, Gal Nagli, if you know him. I encourage you to read that blog post. But also that means that this is yet another risk, if we come to depend on another software. So we need to understand how. But no question that it would, without a doubt, create a lot of the processes that we do now faster, both for attackers and for defenders. So I think it brings a lot of value for defenders as well as for attackers.
Awesome. On another topic, a question for Nir. So Nir, I know you are working with the DHS on SBOM tech. Can you share from your insights about the leading requirements to be implemented?
Yeah, thank you. You hear me? One.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, we're working and collaborating at Scribe with DHS, who just selected to their Silicon Valley Innovation Program, and I invite you on 3 o'clock. We are presenting in their booth. It's a nice one. And regarding the DHS, and we are working and listening closely to the regulation. Generally, the US government identified the topic of software supply chain as an issue starting from 2021, again, SolarWinds and other attacks that happened. And it started by the executive order, 14028, was published at May 21, to start to ignite multiple processes, writing best practices and directives to secure this open greenfield, let's call it this way. Next thing that happened is that NIST published on 2022, published the Secure Software Development Framework, SSDF, to the market as a standard to start to comply with, start to work with it, and we will improve it, but it was like an urgent publication after so many talks. So this is out there, and organizations are starting to align to this. The important part of the enforcement started at September 22, when the Office of Management and Budget, which is responsible for acquisitions across the government, said if you are not starting to apply and comply to these best practices, it's a directive, you should attest regarding SBOMs, vulnerabilities, an issue in your products if you want to work with the government across the board. So this is a process that already is starting to be a mandatory. And the last thing is about a month ago, the National Cybersecurity Strategy was published by the US government. And the key points there is, first of all, there are many things, but the key point regarding the software supply chain security is first, the shift of responsibility and liability to software producers instead of the consumers and instead of the open source community. So they understand that the open source community is not responsible. You cannot claim any kind of debt to there and to invest. This is an innovation ecosystem. So it's a shift to the responsibility for the software producers. Second is incentivizing a kind of a safe harbor for organizations that will start to do these practices of publishing SBOM, working with them, and vulnerabilities like aligning to the SSDF. It means like if something happens, you can demonstrate that you did the best practices, the best you can, and you're okay. By lawful suits and things like that, this is a very important part. And the third thing is that the US government is pushing many collaboration with the private sector because they understand it's not an issue of the government. So they are having multiple workshops on the topics. It's not just an SBOM, it's what you do with the SBOMs, the automation tools. There is another initiative called VEX, which actually trying to handle the amount of vulnerabilities, which is a lot of noise, how to reduce them. It's like a negative advisories that it's okay in the context of something or in your network, this vulnerability is not relevant. So this is to reduce the nodes, and everything should be automated and standardized. So this is a very big effort coming out of there. And additional thing is also in Europe. So we've seen the Cyber Resilience Act, which is called the CRA, again, a few months ago was published, addressing the topic by starting to work with the software bill of material. I assume you heard about this term, is actually analyzing, getting visibility of what all the components inside of every version, to manage it, first of all, to have the visibility, and then to manage the vulnerabilities, the issues, including compliance of licensing and everything with this part, because now nobody have this visibility, so everything is good, including poisoning and injections that is getting inside. So this is a lot of effort, and initiatives are coming and workshops, and you should watch this, and definitely it's going to affect the industry as a whole.
Karin, from I know you led Citi for many years, and regarding the presenting consumer in software supply chain solutions. From your perspective, are there any standards missing today affecting consumers?
Yeah, so as Nir mentioned, most of the standards that currently have been launched and adopted by the different government agencies, etc., are mostly focused on who develops it, okay, on the developers, the ownership is there. But when we talk about a consumer, there's not a lot of frameworks. So we had Microsoft sharing their own framework with OpenSSF, the S2C2F framework, which again, it's a good start, but again, we're not there yet. There's a lot of, there are several models there where each organization can pick, let's say, according to its maturity, like how to process it. But to be honest, I believe that we should expand it because again, we're dealing with an emerging threat. The attackers are always evolving. The standards are not fast enough. Even from an adoption perspective, I'm not sure that even most of the organization know about these standards. So again, try to raise awareness, try to talk about the different acronyms, try to see like perhaps we should combine two of them, the VEX and other ones. There's the SALSA directive as well. So again, a lot of acronyms, a lot of good efforts, but we need to focus on the one that eventually will bring most value. And from a consumer perspective, again, we should try to understand like what is the value, because the SBOM is not from a consumer angle, okay? So we're trying to find the best balance on that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think we have some, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to comment about that regarding SBOM. I think we got a lot of traction when there was the Log4j vulnerabilities, and a lot of our like users or customers asked us to help them. And one thing that was very apparent is that some of our customers had SBOM, and so they thought it would be very easy to understand where the vulnerable code is, and it was very far from that. And one of the tests, like the research that we done to perceive that followed that, was to check why there's an OWASP flagship project of dependency check, and it should list all of your, it should be easy, and yet it misses on a lot of things, and we found many things that, for instance, just a lot of those tools are going by file names, and that might not be enough in your organization. And the bottom line is those tools might miss. So it's not just running a tool; it's challenging it, it's checking it, it's saying that it's right for your technologies, and so on. And the practice of this is harder than it look at first glance. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have some time for questions from the crowd. If you want to ask a question, there's a microphone over there. Anyone? Go ahead. Just talk to the microphone, please, because it's recorded.
I didn't sign up for standing up. A question around, you mentioned the focus, it's on the who develops it, not on who consumes it. Can you elaborate a bit more, please? What do you mean by that?
Like from
Again, regarding the regulation, where it's heading regarding liability issues to the producer. So there's a shift to the producers, meaning that we cannot expect from the consumers to handle this mess. It's a really complex issue. So you cannot, and the test is really when something bad happens. Who is responsible? Who can I sue in the commercial area if something bad happens? So the issue is now shifting more responsibility to the vendor, asking them to manage the SBOM, to give attestations, manage the vulnerabilities, to update the customers if something happened, and not expecting from the customers to manage the known unknown or even the known that they don't know. So yeah, so this is the concept of it.
Thank you, Nir. More questions? Okay, so I'll ask a question for the panelists. I have a question for Omer. So what are some of the challenges in achieving reproducible SBOMs? And how can organizations overcome these challenges?
Right. So just as I spoke before about the challenges of SBOM, so I think one of the things that we understand is you can't just rely on file names. You need to check content. And also, like we mentioned it before, that the SBOM is a live thing. It's constantly changing, and you constantly need to run your tools or something. If you go and check back a few months, your last report, which is a few months back, or even weeks back, it might be completely non-relevant for some dependencies, for some versions, and if you rely on that, that's a very bad habit. Okay, and so for it to be constantly updated, you have to have it running. You have to have someone overseeing it, and you have to know how to read it and correlate it to whatever data you have in logs and so on. So in terms of practicality, I can just say that this emerge of risk and issue also caused a lot of new, very interesting solutions. So I encourage to see what's new in this field because it's an evolving field, and there's a lot of new and good solutions that are better than the old way that we used to conduct these.
Well, I want to add that for me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. No problem. Thank you very much. Question first on your observation. I have read the strategy, and it does put the onus on the producers. But I do want to say, as a customer, I understand that you are responsible for litigation, but when my network gets breached, I do need SBOMs to understand the lay of my land, exactly as Omar said. So part of the question is, how are you making it easier for your customers to ingest your SBOMs? Are you providing them comprehensive SBOMs? What are you doing to help them defend themselves when the attacker is through the door? Thank you.
I will start, and you can add. So first of all, yes, it's more challenging for customer, but it's a must. They start to manage because part of managing the risk and the assets is understanding and identifying these assets, and the SBOM is part of granular way to manage your assets and risk. The way we approach it is we build a kind of in Scribe Security we build a kind of a Scribe hub that enables automatic granular sharing between the vendors and the suppliers. So imagine that you can have a platform that can share these SBOMs to manage them in a certain place, but not just the SBOM. It's SBOMs, attestations of the process, and vulnerabilities and updates and issues that the customer and the provider, or even the integrator or auditor, can see the same data. So this is the way one way to handle it. And by the way, there was recent publication in the last month regarding sharing mechanism by CISA. It's another one, a framework. It's how to share the SBOM automatically, levels of maturity to measure the sharing mechanism between providers and consumers. So it's definitely an important part.
No, I'd like to add, I think it's a bit challenging to force your vendors, to play and provide you the most accurate SBOMs. And adding to that, even if you have attestation on the entire software supply chain from a vendor, what can assure you that it's not containing malicious contributions from its source? So like a threat actor from this third party decided to add a malicious code. So it's going to be signed, it's going to be verified. So basically, it's a list of ingredients. It's great for visibility. It's great to know what your software contains, but it's not going to prevent anything. You need extra solutions on top of that, and making sure you have the best visibility.
And also, I can just add that every organization has things differently, and that they affect, maybe in a major way, of the SBOM and how you read it. Because some, for instance, just the easiest example is that some CI goes by the lock version, for instance, the package lock version, and go by that, and some goes to the original package lock. I'm using NPM, but it's in Puppeteer, and it goes everywhere for every dependencies, and that's like a big changer of which one was, which package did we actually use.
Right, go ahead, Karin.
I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to mention that the local forum that we established in Israel of the different researchers is something that we're interested in expanding also, because eventually we have city sponsorship on that. I know that I'm currently working at Trellix, and Trellix is also engaged in the supply chain. And we are seeking for contributors, because again, we believe that the answer and like how we will be able to deal it from an ecosystem will come from people. Okay, even this initiative, it just, we talked about it, we said, so let's do something about it. So we invite you all, please ping us after the panel.
Let's make it global.
Yeah, we want to make it global because again, it's not a local initiative. We just, if we're able to convince like Israeli competitors to join forces and, share information about the threat actors and the threat, so I'm sure that we can find the path for salvation, let's say.
And one last thing before we are finishing, because we're just about to run out of time. In 1 hour, in Moscone West track session, I'm presenting together with Tal Folkman, a senior researcher in my team, a threat hunter, regarding more tangible examples of how threat actors exploit developers and the fragile ecosystem of open source. You're going to see how they upload malicious contributions, how they use different attack techniques, typo squatting, starjacking, how easy it is for attackers to create malicious packages. So I invite you to join our session. It's 1 hour, Moscone South. Check the agenda. Moscone West. And thank you very much. Very nice to have you.